third is Suarez. Goodell comes running in. He's under it, makes the catch. Here's the throw to the plate. It's in the air. He is out! Cameron Rick hangs on! Oh, man, what a play! Deep to right field. Way up and way second
Welcome back to the Stupid Money podcast after a little bit of a break. I know we have not addressed the end of the season, obviously, yet. I'm waiting for Sean. Sean's a little busy the next couple of weeks, so we aren't able to do that. We want to kind of sulk or whatever we're going to do about how the season ended. We are going to get into that maybe next week or the week after. But free agency is honestly off to a faster start than I thought or I expected to happen, I guess. So we got to get into that quick before too many guys get off the board. So Alex is here to help me do that. We're going to go over both of our picks for the offseason. We were just talking before we get into it, guys, we do have the Phillies again. We were just talking about this before we started, but the qualifying offer was like a real big thorn in the side for the Phillies this offseason. It looks like. I mean, I had the list from Jeff Passan. Aaron Judge, Trey Turner, Xander Bogaerts, Jacob deGrom, Dansby Swanson, Carlos Rodon, Brandon Nimmo, Wilson Contreras, Chris Bassett, Anthony Rizzo, Tyler Anderson, Martin Perez, Jock Peterson, Nathan Eovaldi all got qualifying offers. I think in the perfect world, most Phillies fans wanted the Phillies to pick two guys off of that list. But as we were talking about, they'd have to give up the second, third, fourth, fifth round picks in next year's draft, plus $2 million from international signing. So I think we're both in agreement there that unfortunately two guys from that list is probably not going to happen.
Yeah. I didn't know if that was like I had to like Google it. I didn't know if that was always like the rule or we just weren't like used to it considering we never break the luxury tax. But now that we did, yeah. But like normally, if you're a franchise like the Dodgers or something, that's one, always in win now, and two, their farm system for some reasons always like ridiculously good. You could kind of sacrifice the 4 draft picks maybe for a year. But how the Phillies are, they're in win now, but their farm system's like not horrible, not like it used to be, but it's still pretty depleted. So you kind of need those top 5 draft picks to at least build it up a little bit.
Yeah, the Phillies farm system has good players, but it's very top heavy right now. I think they would not like to part with picks, and they've had to part with a lot of picks in the past because of the qualifying offer. So I think they'd like to avoid that this time around. So yeah, I neither of us and most people I see on Twitter do not see the Phillies parting with 4 picks. So unfortunately, I don't think from either of us you will see 2 players from that list in our off seasons, even though I think that would be the way we'd like to go. So it is what it is, I guess. But as we get started here, all right, we got the perfect off season here. We're gonna start with Alex's. I'm gonna let him read off. We got obviously the years on the left and then the money value on the right there.
Yeah. So obviously shortstop, everybody's kind of been talking about it with the Phillies. The 4 main guys are Turner, Correa, Swanson, and Bogaerts. Honestly, I'd probably have Bogaerts last, but that kind of seems to be the one with outside of Turner the most traction right now as far as Phillies' interest. Yeah. But I mean, for me, Turner's been one of my favorite players personally since he was with the Nationals, and I just think the fit makes too much sense as far as needing an infielder. He loves Bryce. He's used to the National League East. He wants to be out east. So I think I saw today that they were kind of working towards maybe in Turner's camp, they want like 32 to 35 AAV. So I kind of lowballed that number. I have it like 6 years, 31 a year. I guess you could load it however you want to. But yeah, I just think as far as the infielders go, Trey Turner, he's an upgrade on defense. He's a major upgrade on offense. It just makes sense. Next, I have Jose Abreu for 2 years and $26 million. that is bypassing. I was talking to Alec. I don't think all of the prospect pitchers that we have in the system make it through the offseason. I think one of
Yeah.
Painter, Abel, or McGarry kind of go. I think Dombrowski will try and do something since we talked about all of the big pitching that's kind of on the free agent market has qualifying offers. So it's
Hmm.
kind of tough to part. So I could see them kind of dipping their toes in on one of the Bieber, Glasnow type
Yeah, I
pitchers.
do. I have that actually. If you want to get to that,
Oh,
I saved
yeah.
it for just to talk
Yeah.
about this. But yeah,
I'll
so
go
yeah,
into
this trade you got.
yes. So the Guardians were, I think, second to last in the league in home runs. So
Hmm.
Hoskins, 30 home runs, could kind of boost that up a little bit. They wouldn't have to pay him yet, but I guess they would next year. Bieber is actually younger than Tyler Glasnow, which is
Oh wow.
crazy to me because I feel like Glasnow kind of just broke onto the scene, but he's
Right.
28 and Bieber's only 27, I believe. He's under control until 2025, so with the news of Bryce, we don't really know what's kind of going on there. So it wouldn't just be like a year rental trade if you're giving up one of the pitchers. I picked Abel because it seems like Dombrowski's pretty high on Painter potentially being in the rotation relatively early this season, and then Rojas, another top 5 prospect in our system, and Maton, one of those infield pieces that has shown that they could play at the big league level if they are given a chance. So I don't know how kind of practical that trade is, but I feel like it kind of makes sense for both sides. As far as the Guardians are just like a pitching factory, it seems like they just breed pitching, and they could use some home runs in the middle of their lineup.
Yeah, so I plugged this into baseball trade values, and because I actually thought it was gonna be pretty far off, but it wasn't. So Bieber has, I don't know, they call it like millions or however their point system works on that website, but
Mhm.
Bieber's number was 55, and the collection from the guys in this trade was, I think, like 41 and a half. So I
Yeah, that's
think unfortunately you would have to maybe I know this isn't canon what this website for what the teams go by, it's not the letter of the law, but McGarry's value on there is like a 12. So I think if you add him, then it's a pretty fair trade. So I could see that happening, but you made a lot of good points there. Hoskins, they need the power, and Maton, the way that team plays small ball, I think would be
mhm.
such a good fit for them. The way with his speed, and he doesn't strike out a lot, and he can bunt.
Yeah. And I know they have. I don't know if I didn't watch too many Guardians games, but I know they have Naylor who plays first. But I mean, you could easily DH Hoskins if you're scared of his defense, and they're a really good defensive team. So I guess they would kind of not mask because you can't really mask a first baseman's defense. He's already hidden over there, but
Right.
they'd kind of make up for it with the rest of the way their team plays.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was looking for teams to take Hoskins, and obviously the Athletics coming to mind, but the Athletics don't have a lot the Phillies would want in terms of like putting a package like this together,
Yeah,
because their best player is the catcher, Sean Murphy, I think is his
yeah,
name, and obviously the Phillies don't need a catcher.
right.
So I teams like Cleveland makes a lot of sense because they have all of the pitching. So yeah, and fortunately I looked, and Hoskins' value before last season on baseball trade values was 16, which is
Was it?
pretty
Isn't it like
good.
.7 now?
It's at point 0.7, yeah.
Yeah,
So he dropped about 16 points or whatever you want to call it from the start of last year, which is pretty significant because last year this package with Hoskins' value would get Bieber, and I
yeah.
think everyone from the Phillies would take that. Unfortunately, his value going down so much, if the Phillies do anything, they're gonna have to add a lot more, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I know the trade value calculator kind of has it off a little bit, like you were saying,
Yeah.
55 to 40 or whatever. But I know, like it's kind of arbitrary because I know MLB prospects, their top 100 list has Abel somewhere in the 50s. Fangraphs has Abel as like the number one. I don't know how often Fangraphs updates it because Painter wasn't very high, but they have
Hmm.
Abel as like the number 19 prospect in baseball and like a top 5 pitching prospect in the sport. So like I don't know. I guess it just depends on what kind of analytics or what scale you use, but
Yeah.
it seems like Abel's thought of pretty highly in the analytical world.
Yeah, for sure. He's still. I think he is looked at incorrectly because just the rise that Painter has had so quick.
Yeah,
I
I
think it's
agree.
just that Painter is really good, like really, really good. And Abel might still be good, but he's just going through the normal progressions of the minors, whereas Painter's kind of sprinting through them. And
Yeah.
people are comparing the two of them, and it's a little unfair. Is kind of, I think people from the Phillies or Phillies fans, at least, some of them think Abel's a bust, but it's just the fact that Painter might be really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, Abel's still like 19 or 20, so
Yeah. So,
um,
I mean, yeah, he still has
so
a lot
then
of value there.
yeah, kind of going off that trade since Hoskins is gone, I like Abreu. His WAR last year, I think it was I want to say it was either 4.2 or 4.4, so the
Hmm.
guy can still hit. And Rizzo just got 20 million and
Yeah.
20 million a year, and Abreu's WAR was higher than his. So I don't know. Uh, I've seen some sites say that 13 to 15 would be like the average value for Abreu per year. So 2 for 26 after the Rizzo deal might be a little low, but based on what I've seen, I feel like that's a
Hmm.
somewhat realistic. And again, if Bryce is out, you're going to need some power. I think Abreu had at
Yeah.
least 30 doubles last year, so the guy could still hit even though he's a bit older. I think a 2-year deal for him would be perfectly fine. And then the last offensive piece that I have, um, this was before the Bryce news. I wrote this up last night, but Duvall's an elite, I'd say elite defender. At least he has been throughout the course of his career. And every once in a while, he could hit for power and get his bat going. And kind of, we saw it when he got dumped from the Marlins and then ended up back on the Braves the year they won the World Series. The guy just hit a ton of home runs and got ridiculously hot for them for no reason.
Hmm.
So he'd be a good kind of defensive piece to have to take Castellanos off his feet every now and then and rotate through the outfield. And maybe he'll kind of refine the average and hit a little bit depending on how long Bryce is out. And then Camargo back on whatever the minimum is. I don't know if he has any like minor league options left, but familiar with the clubhouse, familiar with the organization, could kind of rotate him around in the infield depending on if you want to give Bohm the shortstop and Stott a day off. Going into the pitching, we talked about Bieber as their number 3. So then you'd kind of just be, I know Dombrowski in his press conference today said they're going to give a young guy a shot to be the number 5 out of the when camp breaks, whether it's,
Hmm.
he talked about Falter, Sanchez, or even Painter. But I kind of went Chad Kuhl, local kid from Delaware or Westchester. He's a solid number 5. And if you plan on giving the young guys a chance, he'd be a good depth piece and without having to overpay for somebody maybe like Quintana, who's coming off a career year, or somebody in that department. And then Knebel, I think Knebel was pretty good when he wasn't the closer. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is. Guys like Neris couldn't close here, but when he was in the 7th or 8th, he was good. Knebel's
Hmm.
starting to kind of weave out that role for himself before he got the shoulder injury that had him out the rest of the year. So I wouldn't mind him back on a cheaper deal, kind of just to fill out the bullpen. And same, Ottavino had a really good year last year, which
He
surprised me
did. Yeah.
considering the league's kind of trending towards less finesse and more 98 with sink, whereas Ottavino kind of is the righty Brad Hand in a sense, where he just flips that slider up there the entire game. But it worked for him last year, so kind of the same thing. A cheap deal to solidify the bullpen, get some depth, get some guys who have been around for a while and know how to get outs. And the last piece that I have is Taylor Rogers. He bounced around a little bit last year, but for the most part, I thought he was pretty good. He throws a heavy sinker, and it seems like the Phillies have done pretty well with guys, whether it's Suarez or Alvarado, those lefties who throw the sinker. They kind of know how to use it and how to work off of it. And his ERA got a little high last year after the trade, but I don't think he was as bad as the numbers let on. It's so tough with relievers because they give up 1 run and their ERA jumps just because they don't have the volume of innings. But I think he'd be a solid piece to kind of give another lefty in the bullpen that's not just Alvarado.
Yeah, I mean, I think they do need another lefty for sure. So Rogers, yeah, last season I don't think went how he would have liked, but there's still a lot of talent there with him, I think, and I think he would be a pretty good pickup. Brayu, I was all over that too with the thought of Hoskins being out of here, and I couldn't get kind of the thought of like Raul Ibanez 2.0 out of my head.
Yeah.
In a way, like Pat Burrell was like there's some similarities between Pat Burrell and Rhys Hoskins. They both couldn't defend. They both couldn't defend. They both hit a lot of home runs, and they were both kind of the first player from the rebuild to pop up. You know what I mean? And then like their time kind of ran its course before things like, I know they won the World Series with Burrow, but before things really got going.
Yeah.
And I like it. Just there's a weird similarity there to me between like Hoskins, Abreu, Burrow, Ibanez. I just kind of see that there. But yeah, other than that, I mean Turner, I'm gonna agree with you there. You will see, but yeah, I would take this for sure, especially because we're considering the Bieber trade here, which would be a monster offseason to get Bieber, Turner, Abreu, and then add a lot of pitching depth.
Yeah, and Bieber's contracts. I checked last night. I'm pretty sure he's under team control until 2025 with like arbitration, and his arbitration number was like not much higher than. I think Hoskins is what 12 million this year.
Yeah, he was like 7.5 last year, so I think it's gonna be around 12. Yeah,
I want to say Bieber's was around 11 or 12. So like Shane Bieber or Rhys Hoskins, I'd probably take Shane Bieber, but
yeah.
And then that would bring their payroll up to like about 228 to 235 million, depending on how you work around the contracts. And I know you and I talked about that they probably don't want to exceed the 250, but I feel like, especially after the season, that the postseason, and they kind of saw how the fans bought back in, I feel like breaking the luxury tax is more than reasonable with the turnout.
Yeah, look, I think this is going to continue to happen. I think there's going to have to come to a point, though, where they do get under it for the sake of the draft picks and the other penalties that are involved. But yeah, I think Middleton's hungrier now than ever. So I expect him to keep going.
Yeah. Once I saw when they clinched him getting the beer dumped like all over his face in the Houston clubhouse, I had a feeling that he'd kind of get the itch to go back.
Yeah, for sure. I think he is there. So just really quick, Mayan. I want a little more, I guess, depth wise than like stars, I'd say. So I have Turner now. I have Turner 5 for 190. Just the fact that he's already 30 and he plays shortstop for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to pay him more and then get him out the door before he declines too much. And I know, look, that's probably not what he wants because he would like a little more security later in his career. But I have him, I have him at 30, 38 AAV here. I have a hard time him saying no to that for 5 years. And if he's as good as he thinks he is, I think he'll be able to get, a smaller 2-year offer after that would still pay him maybe 20 a year. So I'm paying him a little more just because I'm trying to make this run now with this group. And I don't want to drag all these guys into their late 30s. I mean, we already have to do it with Harper. We're going to be getting close to it with Castellanos and, Real Muto too. So I'm not trying to do this with everyone. I guess it's the best way to put it. So I'm going to try to do 5 for 190. I'm going to give him a little more, but less years.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So before I bounce to the pitchers, I do want to go infielder Adam Frazier. I was looking, especially after the Harper news that he might miss a bunch of time next year came out today. I wanted kind of a guy that can play infield and outfield because there's going to be days where maybe they don't want Stott facing a lefty. And there's going to be days where, Bohm needs a day, or even if Reese needs a day off and Bohm's playing first. And, if Schwarber or Castellanos DH. They have a guy that can move to the outfield. And I just think back to like the Rays and the Cubs made/won World Series with Ben Zobrist. The Dodgers were so good with Chris Taylor. The Astros with Marwin Gonzalez when he was younger. And, Frazier's not a flashy player. He only hit 230 this past year, but he's like a career 275 hitter, and he gets on base a lot. And I just think kind of having a high OBP guy that you could plug in there and play multiple positions is good to have. So I'm kind of on him right now. I was thinking about Tommy Pham too, maybe both of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I took Tommy Pham out because I'm like, if I'm giving Frazier 11 a year, am I going to give Pham 10 to 12 a year too? So I just kind of went with the guy that had more flexibility between the outfield and the infield for right now. And then, I'm not even going to try to say his first name, but Yoshida, the outfielder from Japan. Now that Harper, we know, is going to miss like at least probably a couple months of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did the Phillies get involved here? And then when Harper comes back, does it just go to, we'll figure out who the best 8 are, or I guess the best 9, considering the DH, who the best 9 are, and the odd man out we can trade or whatever at the deadline. Like, especially Hoskins, if they can have Schwarber move to first or figure something out with their infield alignment. Do they go after him? I know like he has no experience in the majors yet, so it's a little risky, but
I know how much it would. I know Suzuki, who signed with the Cubs last year. He was what, 5 for
75, I think, something like that.
I think it's 85. So he's
85,
like
okay.
17 a year. I wouldn't hate, and then the guy said he wants to play in Philly. Like,
he loves Harper apparently. Yeah.
His dog's named after Harper. His social media accounts have like BH34 or something like in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's all over Harper, so I feel like he'd love to come and fill in for him while he's hurt. But yeah, I don't know how. I just feel like we never get international people that are like in the pool. But I don't know. Maybe since he's interested, it's a different story. But I don't know. I'd be interested to see if they kind of dip their toes in the water and see what it's like interest-wise as far as his camp goes.
Yeah, if Harper was either A, like not needing surgery, or B, only expected to miss like a month, I wouldn't even entertain this thought. But if this is to the point where it's like half the year or something,
I could easily see it being till like the All-Star break.
Yeah. And then, look, I don't know what that does for you in 2024 or whatever, because obviously you got to give this guy a multi-year deal. Can you make Kyle Schwarber your first baseman and this guy plays left? I don't know. It kind of ties people down to spots then a little more, but I think if they want to stay competitive in this window they have open, it's something to consider. Because, I mean, he's apparently like, he walks a ton. He doesn't strike out a lot is the big thing for him. If you could put him 1 and 2, and then, your 3, 4, 5 is some combination of Bohm, Schwarber, and a bounce back Castellanos. Like those guys are going to drive in a ton of runs with those two guys up there at the top. So that was just kind of a fun thing I thought about with Harper out that they could try to do. Again, it works short term. Long term, I think it brings more questions than answers. But when you're probably not bringing Hoskins back in 2024 and you're trying to win now, I think it's something they at least need to consider. And then going to my pitching quick. Ross Stripling to me is like just older Ranger Suarez. Like this guy can pretty much do every role for a team in the pitching staff from starting to, I don't know if he's close, but I know he's done a lot of bullpen stuff. And I just think about getting back to October and maybe Painter or McGarry or both of them are like absolute studs. So, they have like a Spencer Strider type year where you trust them in a playoff game, even though obviously Striders didn't go well, but they still trust him to make the start. Stripling then moves to the bullpen where he could be like a multiple inning guy, and he has a lot of experience. He played with the Dodgers, obviously, which is a pitching factory. So he's a guy I'd be willing to bring in because I honestly think too he's the best pitcher that doesn't have the qualifying offer on him.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of all over him right now for a couple of years. I had agree with you on Adam Ottavino. I did not know his year was that good, and I was in on that one too. I liked it. I'm bringing
Yeah.
Eflin back.
I had no idea Ottavino was doing that good. And then I was
Yeah,
watching the one Mets game with my friend who's a Mets fan, and he like wasn't upset that Ottavino was coming in a close game. And I'm like, that seems
that's
odd.
that's
So
funny.
he was like, no, he's actually having a good year.
Yeah, that is funny. And then Eflin to me, it's kind of like a Stripling 2.0 thing where we can I think he might ask for more money than I'm giving him. I'm giving him 10 and a half for 2 years. I think maybe this is closer to like 336 or 338, maybe. But I guess I kind of lowballed him here. But to me, Stripling again, if I need him to start, he's there to start. Or he fared okay in the bullpen. There were times he looked great, and other times like that game against the Braves in the first game of the NLDS where I was like, oh God. So
Yeah.
I think he wants to come back. I don't know how much of a discount he'd give them to come back, but I think they can make it work. And kind of what I'm going with Stripling and Effling is I want these versatile guys that if I need a start, I get a start. If I need you in the seventh inning, I could get you there. So that's kind of where I was at there. And then I guess just for the heck of making a trade, I got Dylan Floro, who not a bad reliever with the Marlins, not a flamethrower. His
Mhm.
strikeouts per nine is like 8.8 or something like that. Then I'm giving them like our 24 and 28 prospect. Not a crazy trade, but I think with the reliever market was kind of top heavy, and honestly, a lot of the big names from the reliever market that are not washed up closers like Kimbrel or oh God, what's it? Jansen.
Jansen's
Uh,
projected to get like a lot of money too. Like
yeah, and the Phillies just aren't gonna pay closers. I feel like after the whole Papelbon thing, like the Phillies are
yeah.
never paying a closer again. I feel like. So I'm kind of going for more of like depth in my bullpen, and then I'm gonna let Sir Anthony and Alvarado kind of do a rotational closers thing, I guess so to say, and then I'm gonna add these guys to the middle innings, kind of solidify that. And obviously Brogdon was pretty good down the stretch, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is I think they might be better off trading for some relievers than signing some of these older guys that are asking for too much. I wouldn't have minded Suarez, who obviously Harper hit the home run off of back with the
Mhm.
Padres. And I think they just re-signed Nick Martinez
Yeah.
too. And
I was kind of in on Nick Martinez, but he got what,
yeah,
12 million a year?
he got three. Yeah, I think 3 years, 12 million a year. And then Montero, who we saw in the World Series, obviously another
Yeah.
one I was interested in. He went back to the Astros. So kind of the guys I was in there. No longer there. So that's why I think they might be better off going the trade route there.
Yeah,
But
I will say I watched Dombrowski and Sam Fold's presser today. They like Fold was like raving. I'm not raving. He talked about him like a little bit, but he said some like pretty good things about McKinley Moore. So I'd be interested to see. I guess he's in what, double or triple A already.
I
So
think he was in Double A. Yeah,
not how he progresses, but I guess kind of where they start him and how they utilize him this year because they said that he
hmm
pitched really well in the second half of the season.
yeah. So we'll have to see. I don't. I was just trying to throw a trade in there for it. I would not mind if they found a way to get Emmanuel Clase from the Guardians. I just
That'd be
don't think
great.
that's gonna happen. I just
That'd probably be a
to
haul.
yeah, that would be more than Bieber. I'm fairly
I I
confident to say
I
that.
think so too, especially because
Yeah.
Beaver's up in 2 years team control
hmm
wise. So I think
I think
Clase would.
Class A is like 5 years of control or something like that,
I think
4 or
you
5
definitely
something.
have to give up Abel and McGarry then,
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah. So I would like that, I guess. But with Floro, I think just a little he's on the cheaper side. He's in his last year of arbitration. So I don't think the Marlins would be too hurt over letting him go. He made 3 million last year, I think, so he'd probably make like 6 this year, which is, kind of the going rate of a reliever.
Mhm.
So that's how I was closing that out. But yeah, overall, I think yours would be a dream
Yeah.
offseason with Bieber, Abreu, Turner. That just really they won 87 games this past year and they were on like a 95 win clip with Thompson or whatever,
Yep.
something around there. I could see them with that roster, even without Harper. Because you have to remember, Harper missed a lot of the time when they did go on this extensive run this past season. I could still, with Harper still missing half the season, like that roster, I think still wins like 96 games.
Yeah, I honestly I haven't looked at the schedule too much. I know September's kind of loaded as far as good teams. So that almost leads me to think that either the earlier portion or the middle portions, not somewhat light because they do play everybody this year, but like lighter. So yeah, I could easily, if Harper's out until the All-Star break, I could kind of, if they get that roster, if they have 3 studs at the top of the rotation and still they have some semblance of run producers in the middle of the lineup, I could see them very well staying afloat until or if Harper comes back.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll have to see what happens. Obviously, still mid-November, lots going to happen. I mean, didn't even have still a month away from the winter meeting, so lots still to happen. So yeah, we're gonna end this one here, but hopefully Sean and I will be back next week to talk about the season. All went down with that because obviously it was an interesting end. But thanks to Alex for popping by. We'll see you next time.